And they can't answer the why that we're doing all of these things, the purpose behind it all. Where can we go to inform our struggle for these really big questions, these overarching questions? Well, the answer is the humanities. Subjects like literature, history, art, philosophy, things of that sort that may seem less important in a world dominated by STEM, but the reality is we've never needed the humanities more than we do right now. And the good news is that these subjects have never been more accessible than they are right now, and that's due in large part, ironically, to advances in technology, such as the internet and AI. Let's take a look at how the humanities can help inform us and make a better AI. I'm going to start with this. AI does not equal understanding. Understanding is not the same thing as just having a lot of data and a lot of information. AI systems, especially large language models, operate on statistical pattern prediction. They learn correlations in language, not lived experience, intention, or truth in the philosophical sense that we understand it. Here's what I mean. So you take human knowledge, and basically it's based on things like experience. It's based on intent. What are we trying to do? It could be based on context. Something means one thing in one context and something means something else in another. It has to do with values, what's important to us and what isn't. There's also a sense of accountability that goes through all of this in the way that humans think about this. But now AI as a model looks at it very differently. So AI models are based on patterns. So they're looking for probabilities. What's the next most likely thing that I should put in this? Token sequences. So I've seen these, again, prediction of what should be next. Statistical associations. I've seen a lot of these, so this one seems like it fits in here. The key distinction is this. AI is fundamentally syntactic. So that's the way it looks at things. It's looking at the syntax, whereas humans look at things more semantically. What is the meaning of that? That's the sense that you and I think of this. AI is really good at manipulating symbols and things of that sort, but doesn't inherently anchor those symbols in lived reality like we do. The humanities teach us really important things like what meaning really is, how language relates to reality, how interpretation changes across different contexts, and how ambiguity is resolved and sometimes actually exploited. Without this kind of grounding, AI outputs can seem correct while being subtly misaligned, incomplete, misleading, or outright wrong. Epistemology is another area that's important. This is a branch of philosophy that deals with things like, what is knowledge? How do we know if something is true or not? What counts as evidence or justification? And what's the difference between belief and knowledge? Can we ever really be certain about anything? There's a lot of important questions here. Those are really important, especially when we consider we're trying to judge the output of an AI that we know can hallucinate with confident errors. And when you consider that much of the knowledge AI has is based on what it scraped up off the internet, well, that could present yet other problems for us. Look, if you remember nothing else from this video, please remember this. Not everything on the internet is true. Yeah, I know, that's a big shock to you, right? Well, you get my point. AI can give us tons of answers, but we still need to decide whether those answers are right. And more importantly, what should we do with that information? Again, not really a STEM question. This is one for the humanities. A common misconception is that AI is neutral because it's mathematical. In other words, the numbers are just the numbers, but the truth is more subtle. The model may be mathematically neutral, but its use is not. So let's consider some different perspectives as we look at this. So we have the AI system, we have the designer, we have the user of the system, and then we have society. So the designer might have had one thing in mind and thought that this was right and this is wrong. The AI system may come out with a different answer than that. And then the user may get yet a different answer still and have a different perspective on what they wanted, what their intent was, what was the right context. And then a user is not necessarily representative of all of society. So while an individual user might think this is okay, the rest of society may not. So What we have to understand is that every training data set encodes error, and every interface encodes design assumptions, and every application encodes incentives. So these things will all guide the way the AI is going to actually work. And this is where ethics, political theory, and sociology become really critical. Humanities training helps us understand the answer to questions like, who benefits from this system? These incentives will matter, and that will affect the output. What assumptions are embedded in the data? What kinds of harms might result from the way the system is used? What are plausible, if incorrect, outputs that could occur? Without this kind of lens, we risk confusing technical performance with ethical legitimacy. An AI system can be accurate and still do the wrong thing. All outputs require interpretation. AI systems don't eliminate interpretation, they just shift it. Think about it this way. We have input into the AI system. It gives us some output. Okay, now what? Well, some human has to interpret this thing. And then they have to make a decision. And then we take action. So it's not as simple as input and action. There are still a lot of steps that go on with this. And the key step in all of this is the one that the humans still own, and that's interpretation. Humanities disciplines, especially things like literary studies, history, hermeneutics, which is the study of what things mean, train people to interpret under uncertainty, and we get a lot of that with AI. So these things teach us things like that multiple valid readings can coexist. You and I can read the same text and have entirely different meanings that come from that. That original intent is not always accessible. Sometimes we think we can discern that by reading a document, but if you weren't in the head of whatever created it, you might not always know what it was that they intended. So text can also mislead without being wrong. So there's a lot of different things that we have to look at here, and AI maps this kind of behavior because AI outputs are probabilistic, they're context sensitive, sometimes they're inconsistent, they're often plausible, but not always guaranteed to be true. So that gives us that level of uncertainty where something like hermeneutics becomes particularly important, where we're trying to determine what that meaning is and divine that from what the outputs we've received. So the user becomes the interpreter, not just the recipient, an active participant rather than just a passive receiver. In other words, AI increases the importance of human interpretive skill,